The Emperor's address to the Assembly and people of Jamaica was in his native Amharic and was translated by a member of his party.
I had always wished to come and visit Jamaica. Now, thank God, this wish of mine has been fulfilled.
You have so much people viral and say, yeah, God, you have to prove it. And fly warplane over the man base and drop dangerous gas, dangerous boom on the man and say you are God. And I know the man says so. Is this long hair, rust, illiterate boy, them run out of airport and say, man, I gotta make them kill him, you know.
Blessed my people. Welcome back, you see me? So peeps, today we're gonna delve a bit into the topic of Rastafari, you know what I mean? How Rastafari thing come about in Jamaica, the struggles where the Rasta man them face from back in the days to reach to the levels at which it is now. And the reason why we face a time to talk about this now because of the fact that there's a lot of fake Rastas out there, you know what I mean? A lot of imposter, a lot of dread, you know what I mean? Them are Rasta. Because them not stand for nothing what Rasta stand for. As a matter of fact, them not even know what is Rasta. Them don't know how hard the Rasta man them fight for their part, them then know as it relates to certain levels, you know what I mean? And was one time if you're a Rasta, you know, police catch you, you know what I mean, they got a jail. A lot of people don't even know that at one point it was illegal to be a Rasta. You know what I mean? Just the fact that you're a Rasta, you're in a problem. You know what I mean? Them thing they change now, you know, Rasta thing. Change up. But a whole heap of Rasta face a whole heap of pressure for the thing to be at the level where it is now. Where Rasta can free to move around. Back in them days, some people that are wearing locks now would not be wearing locks because them are a Rasta. You know what I mean? Them not stand for what Rasta stand for. Them just are wear it now as fashion and I go through. But if it was a time when the struggles did really on, them man they would have never wear locks. So you know we're gonna look into the whole history as it relates to Rasta and Rastafari. We're gonna talk about the challenges what Rasta used to have with the laws of Jamaica, you know what I mean? The government never liked Rasta, you know what I mean? It was illegal to be a Rasta man. Once you're a Rasta, them trim you and all them thing there. You see what I'm saying? So we're gonna look into that, you know what I mean? Rasta and police come a far away. You reach a stage now where you know you have even police where a Rasta man, same way. So the thing really changed from back in the days, you see it? We're gonna talk a bit about the Gardens Massacre, you know what I mean, people? So we're gonna talk about all of the struggles, you see it? And we're gonna talk a bit about Tafari Makanin, you know what I mean, people? Because Tafari Makanin, you know, a emperor, Haile Selassie, you see me? But you know his name is Tafari. So them call him Rastafari. That are basically him pet name. Enough people say them a Rasta, not even know that. You see it? Say I saw the name Rastafari come about. You see me? Because it's Tafari him name. So you have a lot of other Rasta, you know what I mean? We put them name. So you know you have Rasta John, Rasta Mark, you know what I mean? And so you have Rastafari because a Tafari Makanin him name. So we're gonna talk a little bit about him. You see what I say, people, you know Tafari Makanin, you know what I mean, he's a revolutionary king from Ethiopia. You know, he's a man that fight for the freedom and people, you know what I mean, he was successful. And when him start to run the country, he go on good. You see what I say, but him get him ratings as a revolutionist, a man that stand up for the people in him country. But you know, after a time, when a man get in a power, you know what I mean, sometimes them get distracted from the true reason why them did end up in a power from in the beginning. And I think that's one of the things we reach Tafari Makanin. You see what I say, people? Based on history, that's one of the things we reach him. And as I can say, you don't have a dread to be Rasta because Rastafari was never a dread. He never used to wear dreads. You see me? But that's how it go. The Rasta man them have him as the leader for the Rasta movements worldwide. You know, so based on Tafari Makanin's, you know, achievements and how him articulate himself as it relates to how him get himself in the power, the fight where him fight, you know, say the people them gravitate to him. And news of how Tafari do it got to other regions in the world. You know, the Rasta man them say I come from King Solomon bloodline. You get to matter people, so you know, say everybody say yeah, him are the next king. You know what I mean? So you know the Rasta them look up to Tafari Makanin as God, you know what I mean? Rastafari. Him them pray to, you see it? So you know Tafari Makanin, he get famous worldwide, and because him get famous, even though he was the leader of Ethiopia, him busy, him always on the road, him always on tour, you know what I mean? Him give away a lot of things too. He was even in Jamaica one at the time, you know what I mean? You know when him down Jamaica, Rasta out of airport there, you know what I mean? Them say Rasta, all on the plane wing, Rasta want go up.
Them wear red, green and gold and smoke ganja and say that is him and yet to no segregate. He carry money to give them in their hand. And he couldn't give them because they was so illiterate that if him give the money him
right away, you know what I mean? Because people look up to you as God and so on. So I mean Emperor Selassie is, you know what I mean, the leader of the Rastafari religion, the Rastafari movement. You know, we're gonna delve a bit into different sections. Evildoers, because remember now, when you're from a culture where most of the people them I said Jesus and God and them things by himself. So back then everybody has about a mad then basically, you see me? So that used to happen to enough of the youth them when them decided to turn Rasta. You know what I mean? The first that people turn against you when they say I turn Rasta, your parents. Yeah, man, your own parents are them first normally turn against you whenever you decide to say take up Rasta religion. You understand? Because you're basically going against everything with them know, everything that was started, everything with them used to. You get to me I say? So back in them days it did rough. As a young youth to decide say you want to chad Rastafari way, because the first that people turn against you are your own family them, and then the larger portion of society no support Rasta. None at all back in them days. As we said, now we change, you know what I mean, Rasta thing more accepted, you know what I mean, and them get them respect, and you know, them allowed for worship wherever they want to worship, you see it, whoever they want to worship, because everybody have them own freedom. And them days the people Rasta did more aggressive, you know what I mean? Yeah man, them days the Rasta people did more aggressive. Because everybody used to be basically against them, you know what I mean? I give them a fight and a pressure. Them Rasta used to be more aggressive, you know what I mean? So people used to see Rasta as violent people because Rasta used to strongly stand up for them believing. And you know, Rasta them burn them weed, you know what I mean, as them sacrament and all them vibes. And most Rasta try to keep by themselves, you know what I mean? But really and truly Rasta try to live on a certain principle, you know what I mean? Rasta a peacemaker, you know, Rasta not believe in a violence, but you know, so if I bring them things that Rasta go defend themselves. You know what I mean? You have a whole heap of imposter though, because you have some people, them are not Rasta, but then come under the disguise of Rasta, dress up in a locks and, you know what I mean, and go on like say, them holding anybody and this and that one time. Them are just some imposters, some of them not even ready. Anyway, we're going to talk about the Coral Gardens situation, and you know what I mean, Rasta did face some real tribulation them time there. So people, the fight against Rastafarians started from way back under the British colonial government. Yes, when I say people, so it never did start when Jamaica was an independent country. So it's basically when Jamaica was under the British rule. So them time the police force are the British police force, you know what I mean, the army are the British army. You get me? And them used to really treat the Rastaman them bad from back in that time. Even though we're going to talk a bit about the Coral Gardens incident, you know, prior to that incident taking place, there was a lot of tension building up between the Rastafarians and the British colonial government. Yes, people, a lot of tension was building. The British police engaged in several beatings, evictions, and arresting the Rastafarians, and this was back in the year 1958, you know what I mean? So the tensions been building between the British colonial government and the Rastafarian movement. Most of these Rastamen were arrested and charged for possession of cannabis, you know, cannabis, the ganja. This is what Rastaman use as them religious sacrament, as we said in the beginning of this video. And you know people, several of these incidents resulted in police killing of Rastafarians, and some of those arrested were reportedly never seen again due to alleged violence on the part of the Rastafarians and public discourse which emphasized anti-social aspects of the Rastafarian faith. Public opinion in Jamaica largely sided with the government against the Rastafarians. You know, most of the general public sided with the law against the Rastafarian because of the belief where the Rastaman them have. You know, a lot of people never really support them because most Jamaican people believe in the Christian faith, and you know, Rasta come out and them socialize different, and them born Jesus, and them born God, and them born this, and them praise Selassie. You know, as a result of that, a lot of Jamaican people never used to really like the Rastafari movement. Is that them see the Rasta them as a demon. And we can also highlight an incident which transpired in the year year 1959, which is a confrontation between a Rastafari security guard and a policeman at Coronation Market, which resulted in the police beating the security guard, which is a Rasta. This prompted a violent response from nearby shop owners. The police had to bring in reinforcement. They arrested over 57 Rastafarians and brutally beating and forcibly shaving the dreadlocks off some of them. So the British police them back then basically forcibly arrest the Rasta man them, you know what I mean, and trim and shave them. Back in them days, people, it's like when a trim a Rasta man, it's like you take away him identity. It's like you basically take away him life. Most of them Rasta back in the days, them take it to heart and dead. You know what I mean? Some of them decide say you have to kill them before you trim them. Them nah take no trim and no shave. You know what I mean? Them fight for them really believe in it. You see what I say, people? During that incident, a police car and a fire truck were set ablaze. Later that year, Rastafari leader Reverend Claudius Henry was accused of plotting a revolution and communicating with Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro was the president of Cuba, and you know how Fidel Castro became the president of Cuba was a rebellion. You know what I mean? Fidel Castro was basically a rebel leader. So you know, say leaders from England, you know what I mean, would not allow that to happen because them know what capabilities Fidel Castro have. In the year 1960, Henry's son, Reynald, was arrested on the grounds of plotting a revolt. Following a declaration of a state of emergency, Reynald Henry and his co-conspirators were executed. Following these events, the government began to arbitrarily arrest members of the Rastafari community under the justification that Rastafarians were involved in orchestrating a communist revolution, more like something that took place in Cuba. In the year 1962, Jamaica was granted independence, but that did not bring an immediate end to the anti-Rastafarian sentiments, because the government now, which was an independent government, this is Jamaica government now, still saw the Rastafarians as a threat to security. Remember now, this is as a result of the accusation that the leader of the Rastafarian movement was in connection with Fidel Castro, the leader of Cuba. So you know, basically Rastafarians back then were seen as the enemy, you know what I mean, public enemy #1. You get me, as a people, back in those days, you know what I mean, it's alleged that the police who were in training, you know what I mean, would use the images of Rastafarians to do their target practice whilst at the range and so on. You get me, as a people. So police back then were basically being trained to eat Rastafari. And it was not just about the police force or the government being against Rastafarians, you know, people. The general public, I mean the civilians, were also against the Rastafarian movement, because a lot of times civilians would accost these Rastas and beat them to even death. You get me, as a people. So it was not just about the government being against Rastas. It was society on a whole, and it has to do with the belief that Rastafarians have. It was different, and as you know, people don't really adapt to change easily, especially Jamaican people. And as a result of these abuses, you know, the Rastafarians choose to avoid going in public spaces. So back then, most Rastafarians used to isolate themselves. You see, people, Rastafari never used to mix with people. And a lot of modern day Rastas share that same sentiment, and I mean, Rasta not really mix and mingle. Them take to the hills and them stay to themselves, and I mean, eat fresh food and them something they say. So now, people, we're gonna talk about the Coral Gardens property and a Rasta man by the name of Rudolph Franklin. You know, Coral Gardens is a part of a larger property, and I mean the Rose Hall estate, which includes the Rose Hall mansion, you know, I mean the same haunted house, you know, I mean from the story The White Witch of Rose Hall. Everybody know that story. This property was the site of both small scale farming by Rastafarians as well as ambitions of landlords and government officials who hope to convert the area into a tourist destination. The government and landlords saw the Rastafarians as an obstacle, you know, a stumbling block in them way that is preventing them from achieving their goal as reopening this particular area as a tourist destination. They would from time to time frequently send police to evict the Rastafarians from this location. In one such incident where there was resistance in 1961, it is alleged that the police attacked Rudolph Franklin, shooting him 6 times in the stomach and leaving him for dead. Franklin received surgery in the hospital to repair his stomach, but was reportedly told by the doctor that once the plastic rotted, his wounds would reopen and he might die. Following his surgery, Franklin was immediately arrested on the grounds of cannabis possession and sentenced to 6 months in prison. After his release from prison, Franklin reportedly swore to take revenge against the overseer that had attempted to evict him from the premises, that is Coral Gardens. So now people, I'm going to give the account of what actually triggered the massacre in Coral Gardens. Accounts of the incident differ as to the specifics of what happened on April 11 in the year 1961. So according to police reports, a group of Rastafarians armed with spears, hatchets and machetes set fire to a gas station as part of an attempted robbery. A skirmish resulted between the Rastafarian and the police who arrived at the gas station, resulting in the death of 3 Rastafarians, 2 policemen and 3 civilians also on the scene. A separate account published in the Public Opinion and supported by relatives of Rudolph Franklin as well as Syracuse professor Horace Campbell asserts that the violence at the gas station was the result of previous conflicts between Franklin and other Rastafarians in the area on one hand, and the police and property owners on the other hand. So basically people, the second account is saying that the incident at the gas station transpired because Franklin, who is a Rasta, had altercation with some other Rastas. You know what I mean? So Franklin was basically a man who have a whole heap of enemies. So Franklin did have the Rasta man them as him enemy and him have the police them as him enemy. So it obviously Franklin was really a revolutionist, you know what I mean? He was a rebel. Following the skirmish at the gas station, a police man tracked down and killed the other Rastafari who had been present at the skirmish. Jamaican newspapers such as the Daily Gleaner published many articles demonizing the Rastafari and demanding armed intervention by the state. Media also originally described the events at Coral Gardens as an uprising and were later forced to retract their characterization of the event by the Labour Party-led government. On April 12, Good Friday, Prime Minister Alexander Bustamante gave an order to bring in all Rastafarians, dead or alive. The police and military forces entered working class neighborhoods and Rastafari encampments to detain Rastafarians and forcibly cut the dreadlocks of those who were detained. Many Rastafarians were tortured and killed. The exact tally is unknown. One estimate suggests that as many as 150 individuals were detained over the following day. 2 narratives of the incident emerged. One view held that the events of the Good Friday weekend constituted an unlawful uprising by the Rastafarians. This view was supported by the contemporary media reports of the event and the statements of government officials at the time. Meanwhile, the Rastafarian community in Jamaica held that the actions of Rudolph Franklin and his compatriots were a justified reaction to the decades of prosecution by the government and perceived the mass arrests that followed as an abuse of state power. A view that has been reflected by a more recent academic scholarship. The event has been commemorated by the Rastafarian community in Jamaica in 2011. A documentary film about the incident was released titled Bad Friday Rastafari After Coral Gardens. And people, before I go any further, I want you all to know this, you don't have to dread to be Rasta, you understand? This is not a dreadlocks thing. Emperor Selassie was not a dreadlocks. He was a Rasta man, you know what I mean? Rastafari. In the year 2015, Public Defender Arlene Harrison Henry submitted a report to the Parliament of Jamaica detailing an investigation of the Coral Gardens incident and recommending that the government provide financial repatriations for the injuries, abuse and deaths caused by the action against Rastafari community. So you know people, years after the Coral Gardens massacre, an investigation was carried out which proved that the government had made a wrong decision when they decided to detain all the Rastafarians and cut their ear. You know what I mean? The government was also ordered to pay over monies for the abuse and the sufferation that the Rastas went through back then. In April 2017, the government of Jamaica issued a formal apology for the incident. taking responsibility for all the actions that took place that day and stating that the incident should never have happened. The government has established a trust fund of 10 million Jamaican dollars for survivors as repatriation for the incident. So people, now you understand, the Coral Gardens Massacre should never have happened. You understand, people? It was a complete breach of the rights of the Rastafarians, who are also human beings and citizens of this country that have the same right as any other citizen. The right to religious belief, the right to freedom, you know what I mean, and so on and so forth. But that right was basically trampled upon back then, you know what I mean, because the Christian community saw Rastafarianism as a threat, because the Rasta them come out and the Rasta them basically are enlightened people. Say, you have no, believe in what you see and believe in what you can feel. You understand? Don't believe in what people have to say to you, especially slave masters. You see it? As a result of that, you know, say the country itself turn against Rastafari. And once a young youth decides to take up the Rastafarian way of life, you find say his own family forsake him and everybody turn them back against them. You understand, people? So, you know what I mean? I hope I've shed some light on the whole Rastafarian history in Jamaica. You get me? And this is the reason why it kinda pain me hard to see a lot of people get up and say them are Rasta. You know what I mean? Them not talk about them a dread. Them say them are Rasta and them not live the Rastafari way. Them don't understand how far Rastafari I come from. Them don't know the things the Rasta go through, but still them try to use the style and say them a Rasta, and them can't live up to the standard at which Rastafari hold, you know what I mean? Things the man fight for, you know what I mean? Rasta man lose them life over it. So Rasta religion and something to take light, you understand, people? A whole heap of people lose them life over it and them fight hard. You know what I mean, people? It reach a stage now where, you know, Rastafarian they all over. Rastafarian even in the police force. You get me, I say, people. You know what I mean? Rasta in the army same way. So the thing change up now and society accept Rasta, you know, Rastafari now are peaceful people, you know what I mean? Righteousness Rasta man deal with. Anyway, peeps, you can leave your reviews about the Coral Gardens Massacre in the comment section. As also, you can like, subscribe and share. Peace.
It was a visit that was planned because I think he was traveling somewhere in this region, and Donald Sankster, who was acting as Prime Minister at the time, thought it would be a good idea for him to visit Jamaica, where he had thousands of loyal supporters and many thousand others who were semi-believers and associated themselves with the Rastafarians, but weren't really the true authentic Rasta. So with this a number of people, we thought it would be a good idea to have them visit. When myself and my wife got to the airport, at that time it was just Palisades Airport, we were astounded because the amount of vehicles, mostly trucks and vans and so on, that were there, which had obviously brought people in to be a part of the welcome on their own, not officially. These were supporters of Selassie and of Rastafarianism, and they came with their drums and everything, and apparently from during the night and camped out in the airport, playing their drums and singing and having a lot of music, and I'm supposed most likely smoking weed and so on. So on that basis, there was a very large crowd. When the plane landed now, as soon as it was taxied and turning around to come in to be parked, the crowd broke loose from the police barriers and went out on the tarmac in order to greet the plane and to be virtually at the footstep of the plane. So when the plane stopped, they really converged on the plane itself. It was a very difficult situation to handle. The police just couldn't handle it. And what we were concerned about was that you can't smoke in the vicinity of an airplane because of the gasoline and the petrol that is used. And quite likely somebody could have lit up a spliff or something like that. And all of them would have gone. So we were very desperate, and Selassie, looking through the window of the plane onto the astounding crowd that was out there, obviously was concerned himself, because he didn't really expect to meet that. It was an official reception, and that we were expected to be greeted and walk the red carpet and so on. So he stood up at the exit door of the plane for about 20 minutes, sort of waiting for something to happen, with the Rastas chanting and playing drums and so on, around, well, not quite around the plane, in the front where he was standing. It was a total mob scene. And he just wouldn't move, and they wouldn't move. Eventually, I don't know who gave in first, but the Rastas kind of got an idea that if they didn't move, he wasn't going to move. And after that, he was taken from the plane side to the transport to be taken into the city. The reception was abandoned. There was no way it could have been controlled. Well, there was no way we could get into that crowd. Myself and my wife were standing as two lonely figures on the empty part of the tarmac, along with a few other people. There's just no way we could have got into the crowd. In other words, they were there with us and they rather left us. Somebody like Mortimer Planner would certainly know that. And there were a few others like him that had high positions among the group of people that we considered to be the people who you would talk to when you're talking about Rastafaris. Well, I can only recall that there was a state dinner at King's House where he stayed, and this is the usual thing. And at that state dinner, a gift was presented to him. And my recollection is that while there was a state dinner, I believe there was also a more or less open reception going on the grounds of King's House, and that he stepped out on one of the little verandas that adjoin the big living room, and saluted, waved to the crowd, and they of course returned the salutation. And I'm not sure when this speech was made or when his remarks were carried, but he directly told them that he wasn't God. And that was done at some time during his visit. Well, that wasn't believed. Even those who heard it didn't believe it. So it's in popular lore today that never happened. The way they were greeting a deity. So it wasn't just a matter of greeting a man that they admired. If I might mention this, Rastafarism as such came about when Italy had to face a rebellion in Ethiopia. Africa, as you remember, was carved up among the imperial powers, and Italy got Ethiopia. And there was a rebellion that the Italians tried to put down, and I think Selassie had to flee. And that was the symbol that the people who were then black nationalists with Howell seized upon as their God, their man, their king, having to flee. And that was how it came to be known as Rastafari, because that was a part of the title of Haile Selassie. This was a box that was specially created. We didn't have too much of a craft industry at the time, and there was this company that was making boxes for presentation of Jamaica's best cigars, and they were lovely boxes with inlaid map of Jamaica. And looking at it, this is not one of that type of box, but one that we would have asked them specially to make. Now, it is a much larger size, and it is a kind of box that you would put things in that were private, or things that you wanted to have easy access to, and you would want to lock them up in a safe or something like that. So that was a gift to him. I can't remember if there was a gift from him to Sangster, but I'm sure that they would have. The government would have arranged it because it was their visit, his visit to the government, and we were responsible for all those arrangements. And the coach would have been fixed up very nicely because it was transporting someone of a very high position. So that's why it probably was dubbed the Royal Coach. I don't think the government gave it that name, but the people probably did. And if you went by train, the train would have stopped at various spots where people would have gathered. And therefore he could, I don't know if he would have addressed them, but he would have at least been present and returned their waves and so on, short stops. Well, he was a symbol of dignity and had all the bearings of a king. His mannerisms were such that you would obviously know that he came from a background of royalty. And he was not someone who talked a lot or gestured a lot. He was just part of whatever you were doing and obviously had center stage.